The men ran forward to catch Seo Joo-Heon, who had entered first, and with the command of CEO Kwon's subordinates, they ran forward to catch Seo Joo-Heon. While Seo Joo-Heon, who used to work for CEO Kwon, saw some familiar faces in his eyes. Seo Joo-Heon used his strength and placed his palm on the ground, and as Seo Joo-Heon did so, several stones arranged themselves, making the people who were chasing Seo Joo-Heon before hesitate and stop. And after the stone was arranged into a large stone, Seo Joo-Heon dropped it and made the people under it have to dodge if they didn't want to be buried between the stones. Yoo Ji-ha, who saw the power possessed by Seo Joo-Heon, became a little afraid of the power possessed by Seo Joo-Heon, and with that, Seo Joo-Heon got a new title as Tomb Destroyer, who makes archaeologists cry, and his tomb destruction skill also got an increase. The people who did not want to be hit by the ruins of the tomb dodged and ran back, but Seo Joo-Heon, who saw the people running back, used his new power. As soon as Seo Joo-Heon raised his hand, a blue spark was made in his hand, and with that he made the roof of the tomb collapse, falling on everyone who was under it. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw it, smiled happily because his plan was successful to stop the people from following him. And while the people were being crushed, Seo Joo-Heon invited Yoo Ji-ha to leave now. A huge explosion was heard, shocking Yoo Ji-ha, who was running. The explosion came from Seo Joo-Heon, who had perforated the wall of the tomb so that the people could not follow him anymore. And with that, the only way to go further was completely closed by Seo Joo-Heon. Several notification windows appeared, and the skills used by Seo Joo-Heon had improved a lot now. Yoo Ji-ha also told Seo Joo-Heon to leave now before he ended up destroying their own path, and after a while they had reached a theater in the tomb, but the theater was still dark and lacked light. Seo Joo-Heon was sure that the relic Nero was somewhere in the theater, and right after saying that, the iron door behind him closed, trapping the two of them in the theater. Emperor Nero was famous for his cruelty, and famous for his love of art. Nero had even made a book about himself, but his ability to create art was very poor. The Great Fire of Rome also happened during his reign, and it is possible that the fire that broke out in the theater was related to Nero himself. But Seo Joo-Heon had prepared everything and brought the relic Homer's glasses that he had stolen from Yoon Si-woo earlier. Homer was a very famous writer in Greece. He was famous for his works entitled The Iliad and The Odyssey. And although Nero was the emperor of Rome, he was interested in Greek culture, and Seo Joo-Heon thought that the Homeric relic would make Nero become interested in him. But it seems that Seo Joo-Heon's guess was wrong, because suddenly the fire attacked him and made his glasses fall off. Nero arrogantly said that the trick did not work for him, and now Seo Joo-Heon was injured by Nero's fire. Nero also took the Homeric relic from Seo Joo-Heon's hand, and when Yoo Ji-ha took out the Van Gogh relic to suck the fire, Nero also took the Van Gogh relic. Seo Joo-Heon was very upset because of Nero's ability to control fire. Hearing Seo Joo-Heon, who was upset with him, made Nero even more happy and asked them to praise him. Immediately, a very large fire broke out, making Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo Ji-ha overwhelmed. Nero continued to talk with his fire that he continued to release, making them both cornered because of the heat of Nero's fire. But suddenly the fire stopped, making Seo Joo-Heon surprised because Nero looked like he knew him. They were both surprised to see the fire had gone out. Then Nero returned to discussing the novel written by Seo Joo-Heon. Yoo Ji-ha, who heard it, was a little incredulous if Nero recognized Seo Joo-Heon's work. Nero also said that he had been waiting for the arrival of Seo Joo-Heon because, according to Nero, Seo Joo-Heon was his only rival as a writer because his novel was very famous among the relics. Yoo Ji-ha was a little unable to believe that the novel written by Seo Joo-Heon was very famous by the relics, as well as Seo Joo-Heon, who did not know how his novel could be famous. Nero then said that Seo Joo-Heon was being talked about by all the relics and that made Seo Joo-Heon famous among the relics. Seo Joo-Heon then accused Yoo Ji-ha, who might have spread his novel to the relics, but Yoo Ji-ha certainly rejected the accusation. Nero then asked Seo Joo-Heon to come closer to him and would give him a chance to meet him. Seo Joo-Heon still didn't know what happened because she had even put away her novel, and as Seo Joo-Heon approached the stage of the theater, a fire blazed in front of her, and Nero was seen welcoming her happily. Meanwhile, Yoo Ji-ha was surprised because he had just seen a relic that could transform into a human in front of his eyes when he saw Nero. Seo Joo-Heon then said that if a relic that has a high rank can change its form, even if it is just a copy, to serve as an intermediary in communication. And there Nero praised the novel made by Seo Joo-Heon proudly because he really enjoyed his time while reading Seo Joo-Heon's novel. But when Yoo Ji-ha asked what was interesting about the novel made by Seo Joo-Heon, he received a look of disbelief from Nero because Yoo Ji-ha did not see the beauty of the novel created by Seo Joo-Heon. Nero again praised Seo Joo-Heon's novel, which was perfect in several aspects and made it the best work of the century. Nero then pointed at Yoo Ji-ha, who didn't see how beautiful Seo Joo-Heon's novel was, and now Seo Joo-Heon had her own fandom among the relics of Searing. Yoo Ji-ha, who heard that from Nero, sent a compliment as well as a sarcasm to Seo Joo-Heon for getting fans from her novel. Seo Joo-Heon just looked with an indecipherable gaze at Nero now, and suddenly Nero challenged Seo Joo-Heon to a writing competition in his theater now. It made Yoo Ji-ha and Seo Joo-Heon surprised. Even Seo Joo-Heon did not expect that Nero would force himself to be in a competition against Nero. What will Seo Joo-Heon do now? Can she win her competition against Nero? Seo Joo-Heon just stared lazily at Nero, who still wanted to challenge him in a literature competition, because Nero felt that Seo Joo-Heon deserved to be his rival in this competition. Yoo Ji-ha laughed out loud at Seo Joo-Heon, who was a little hesitant to accept the challenge from Nero in the competition. Seo Joo-Heon looked irritably at Yoo Ji-ha, who continued to mock him. Meanwhile, Nero, who saw Seo Joo-Heon did not give his answer, became a little angry, but Seo Joo-Heon did not care about Nero's words now. Seo Joo-Heon knew that he would be very poor in this competition, so he tried to think of another way now, but it seemed that Seo Joo-Heon could not use his strength against Nero because the fire that Nero had just released had successfully cornered him. Seo Joo-Heon thought of another way now, and he also glanced at a metal door that was there. Seo Joo-Heon saw several members of other excavation teams who could not enter because Nero had closed the door. The people there were very noisy and they didn't know what they were getting into and foolishly tried to get in. Seo Joo-Heon only saw them at a glance. A flame flew past Seo Joo-Heon and attacked the people behind the metal door. They all screamed in the heat, and Seo Joo-Heon only saw them suffering from the heat. There was also Nero, who was angry because his time was interrupted by the arrival of the people. Seo Joo-Heon began to plan while Nero was still taking care of the people there, and a notification window managed to make Seo Joo-Heon surprised because he saw a relic that he knew who the owner was. Seo Joo-Heon, who knew that Miller was nearby at this time, was a little surprised because he did not expect Miller to be here now, and if Miller used his relic, then he would be able to know the weakness of Nero and this tomb. Meanwhile, Nero again forced Seo Joo-Heon, who was just silent in front of him, without saying anything. Nero will take care of all of them so that his competition with Seo Joo-Heon is not interrupted by anyone now. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard that, agreed to the challenge from Nero, which made Yoo Ji-ha doubt the decision of Seo Joo-Heon, who accepted the challenge from Nero. Seo Joo-Heon felt he had to get the relic of Nero before Miller came to this place and took it away. Even though Seo Joo-Heon was not sure if he could win this fight, but Seo Joo-Heon wanted to try it. But Seo Joo-Heon gave a condition to Nero: if he did not want to compete in this place, Seo Joo-Heon would accept the challenge if Nero would come with him. But Nero knew the true intention of Seo Joo-Heon, who would get him out of this spear. But Seo Joo-Heon ignorantly said that Nero could kill him now if he didn't want to follow the conditions given by Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon was sure that Nero wouldn't kill him, even though he was more than capable of killing Seo Joo-Heon with his fire before. Seo Joo-Heon gave another reason that he didn't want this competition to be unfair, because Seo Joo-Heon had to compete with Nero in his own place. Because Nero would be more free to fight here, but not with Seo Joo-Heon, who was not familiar, because this place was very dangerous. Seo Joo-Heon also asked Nero to move them to a place where they were both unfamiliar, and Nero agreed. Nero transformed himself into a relic in the form of a crown. Seo Joo-Heon, who managed to persuade Nero, took the crown, and he heard an explosion that occurred above him. After that, there was a voice from Miller calling his name. Seo Joo-Heon turned around and looked at Miller, who was upstairs. Seo Joo-Heon said that he had taken the relic now, but Miller did not believe it because the tomb was still unresolved. Seo Joo-Heon spoke to the relic Nero and asked him to leave the place now, and instantly a dazzling yellow light shone from the place where Seo Joo-Heon was standing before, and the light disappeared along with Seo Joo-Heon. Miller, who did not see any aura from the relic Nero, became convinced that Seo Joo-Heon had taken the relic and left. And with that, the tomb began to collapse, and those inside had to find their own way out if they did not want to be buried in the ruins of the tomb. Seen some buildings and pillars began to collapse, and also seen the roof of the tomb fell, making the tomb gradually destroyed and flattened to the ground. Meanwhile, in another place, seen Austin, who was still looking at the news on his TV about the tomb that was resolved in Kyoto. Austin was angry at the news where they only showed that the tomb had been resolved but did not provide information about who had taken the relic. While Austin was still angry, heard the voice of one of his subordinates who came to report something. The subordinate reported that the person who had taken the relic from the tomb was Seo Joo-Heon. Hearing the name Seo Joo-Heon mentioned, Austin scolded his subordinate because his team had failed to take the relic. The subordinate returned to provide information if the Pandora's team was helped by the presence of Julian Miller, who helped them get out of the tomb. Hearing that, Austin became annoyed with him. Austin also sat down again to calm himself, who was always troubled by Seo Joo-Heon. Austin also asked for further information from his subordinates about what the Pandora team was doing at this time. The subordinate explained that the Seo Joo-Heon team only had 2 members when conquering the tomb. Austin thought again, how could Seo Joo-Heon be able to conquer the tomb, which was even impossible to complete with only 2 team members? Austin had actually paid someone who used the Nostradamus relic on how to complete the relic, and the relic user said that Austin needed at least 100 sacrifices to complete the tomb, and that's why the Pandora team sent so many members. But Austin still couldn't understand Seo Joo-Heon, who completed the tomb with only 2 members. Austin also told his subordinates to keep an eye on Seo Joo-Heon. Nero was seen, who became impatient to fight with Seo Joo-Heon, but Seo Joo-Heon wanted to make a request before he fought to Relic Nero. Seo Joo-Heon also asked Relic Nero to conduct an investigation. Seo Joo-Heon asked how could Nero read Seo Joo-Heon's novel since Seo Joo-Heon didn't even tell anyone, but Nero denied that he had read it illegally when Nero had paid to read Seo Joo-Heon's novel. Seo Joo-Heon became suspicious when he heard that Nero had paid for Seo Joo-Heon's novel. Nero then explained that he got the information from another relic, not from the relic that sold the novel directly. Seo Joo-Heon left Nero to find out the mastermind behind all this. Seo Joo-Heon also planned to question his relics one by one. Seo Joo-Heon started with the rope relic that was always by his side. Seo Joo-Heon immediately asked the rope relic whether he was the one who spread his novel or not, but the rope relic seemed to be covering something. Seeing that, Seo Joo-Heon became angry now, and he again asked the same thing, this time in a stressful tone. But seeing the rope relic who did not want to answer made Seo Joo-Heon feel very annoyed and angry now. Who exactly spread Seo Joo-Heon's novel? And will Seo Joo-Heon really fight with Nero? Seo Joo-Heon was still asking the same question to the rope relic, but Seo Joo-Heon became angry because the rope relic would not say anything to him now, and the voice of Anubis suddenly distracted Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon then asked the rope relic if he really spread the book just to boast about it, but the rope relic said that the relics gathered to read the writings of Seo Joo-Heon before. Anubis also helped convince Seo Joo-Heon if the rope relic was not the one who spread it. While Seo Joo-Heon was still thinking about the possible culprit, Yoo Ji-ha called him to eat his fried chicken, but Seo Joo-Heon refused and asked Yoo Ji-ha about his relic. Seo Joo-Heon removed the rope relic from the possible culprit, but while Seo Joo-Heon was quietly thinking about it, the sound of a relic that was happy because it had earned a lot of money was heard. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard that, opened the door to Yoo Ji-ha's room, and immediately the door opened. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw the relics gathered and reading his novel, became angry, while the relics who saw the arrival of Seo Joo-Heon tried to escape. But Seo Joo-Heon stopped them and threatened them all to gather in front of him. Seo Joo-Heon began his interrogation. Yoo Ji-ha, who had just arrived, was surprised to see Seo Joo-Heon, who was gathering all the relics to find the culprit. And with an anger that Seo Joo-Heon let out, he asked who the culprit was, and immediately the relics compactly turned to the worm relic, while the worm relic felt unacceptable because the relics betrayed him. And when Seo Joo-Heon asked the worm relic nicely, the worm relic boldly yelled at Seo Joo-Heon, and it managed to make Seo Joo-Heon very upset and stepped on him unceremoniously. Seo Joo-Heon asked why the worm relic was here when he was supposed to be with the elixir plant, and the worm relic confessed that he was with the elixir plant. And the worm relic confessed that he did this because Seo Joo-Heon did not pay him even though he had worked well. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard that reason, was a little upset by it. The worm relic defended himself if he did this to earn money because Seo Joo-Heon did not pay him. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon, who was upset, asked the worm relic to spend all the money he had earned by selling his novels, but the worm relic refused. Seo Joo-Heon then glanced at his relic and was going to take it from all of them, but the relic said that they didn't have any more money. Meanwhile, the worm relic, who saw the relic betraying him, became angry and upset. And instantly, the worm relic's body released a golden light and appeared a lot of money that almost filled the room. Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo Ji-ha were surprised to hear the amount of money made by the worm. Seo Joo-Heon also asked the price of his sold novel. Yoo Ji-ha was tempted by all the money on the floor and told Seo Joo-Heon to make a second series of novels. Cleaning up all this would be troublesome because there was a lot of money and valuables from all over the world now, and the worm relic boldly asked for its share. It managed to make Seo Joo-Heon annoyed with him again. Seo Joo-Heon, who found something interesting, asked the worm. The worm relic was surprised to see the object that was in the hands of Seo Joo-Heon now. Seo Joo-Heon also asked for an explanation from the worm relic, but because the relic refused, Seo Joo-Heon was angry again and persecuted the worm relic until he admitted it. Seo Joo-Heon, who just knew about the relic's core, became interested and curious. The worm relic again explained that the stone became the sole reservoir of the destroyed relic. Hearing that the worm relic revealed its secret, The other relic became angry with the worm relic. They both seemed interested in the relic's core now, and after they managed to save all the money that filled the room the next morning because they had finished their business in Kyoto, they decided to return to New York. However, currently in front of the inn that Seo Joo-Heon rented, she received a lot of offers from various people there who asked her to cooperate with her. Seo Joo-Heon was surprised that she didn't even use her relic to gather these people. Seo Joo-Heon realized that the rumors about her successfully taking the Nero relic were the reason why those people were here now, and that meant there were several witnesses when she took the Nero relic. Even Seo Joo-Heon didn't hear about the number of missing and dead people on the news, even though Seo Joo-Heon had taken the relic and the tomb had been destroyed. But because Seo Joo-Heon didn't finish the tomb, there would be no exit created, and they would all have to go back out of their way. And the fact that they all got out and lived, Seo Joo-Heon assumed that this was all the work of Miller, who helped them all to get out of the tomb. Seo Joo-Heon knew very well that Miller wasn't the kind of person who would leave people behind no matter what, and that was why Seo Joo-Heon had gotten into trouble this morning with people coming up to her and sending her messages. And now going to the airport was becoming a difficult thing to do with so many people crowding her lodging. After thinking for a while, Yoo Ji-ha came up with the idea of making a replica of the Nero relic and selling it off. Seo Joo-Heon was not sure about the idea because the relic replicated by Yoo Ji-ha would not last long before disappearing, but Yoo Ji-ha got another way by inserting the relic's core that they got before and making the people believe if the relic was a real relic. Yoo Ji-ha would replicate the relic and make it real by using the relic's core. Seo Joo-Heon temporarily agreed with the proposal made by Yoo Ji-ha to attract the people's attention by selling fake goods that only contained the relic's core inside. But the relics seemed to be shocked when Seo Joo-Heon said he would get the relic's core again if he could destroy another relic. Seeing Seo Joo-Heon, who agreed with his proposal, Yoo Ji-ha excitedly went to carry out the plan. Seo Joo-Heon saw Yoo Ji-ha, who would become the king of fraud in the future, with his brilliant idea, and Seo Joo-Heon smiled interestedly now. Will their plan succeed? Seo Joo-Heon was seen selling the replica of the relic made by Yoo Ji-ha before. Seo Joo-Heon also asked where Yoo Ji-ha would sell the relic, and it seemed that Yoo Ji-ha would sell it on the forum created by Pandora. Yoo Ji-ha showed the forum to Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw the forum for the first time, became interested in the forum created by Pandora, but it seemed like Seo Joo-Heon knew something if this forum was used by Pandora to monopolize information. Seeing that Yoo Ji-ha was still confused about the title of the item he was going to sell, Seo Joo-Heon took Yoo Ji-ha's place and started typing in a title that looked like a sale that looked like a game. But Seo Joo-Heon ignored it because he thought that the more he made it sound unconvincing, the better it would be for them. Since Seo Joo-Heon had no intention of selling it seriously since she had nothing to lose, Seo Joo-Heon went back to typing her lies because she knew that if not many people knew about this relic, then she could do whatever she wanted. After being satisfied with her post, Seo Joo-Heon uploaded the item on the forum and left the room, and right in the afternoon of the same day, Yoo Ji-ha reported that the site had been blocked because of the many comments and people who saw it. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw how fragile the system owned by Pandora was, just sighed, and because of the relic posted by Seo Joo-Heon before, the post became famous and was even covered by a news media on TV. And because of the soaring interest in the relic, it was decided that the relic would be sold at the auction house in LA this month, and when they arrived in LA, Yoo Ji-ha immediately made a replica of the Nero relic with very good quality, and after a while, the day came when the relic was to be auctioned off now, but to their dismay, The venue chosen by Seo Joo-Heon was very narrow, and the people couldn't find Seo Joo-Heon anywhere in the venue. Seo Joo-Heon also divided the task with Yoo Ji-ha, where he would be the host of the auction, and Yoo Ji-ha would collect the entrance fee. Yoo Ji-ha agreed, but Seo Joo-Heon was a little hesitant because Lee Seol-ah was here now, and with the temperamental people here, Seo Joo-Heon's goal was just to run this auction as safely as possible. Yoo Ji-ha was eager to work so that he could get his share too. Seo Joo-Heon came to meet all of them who were angry with him because Seo Joo-Heon was late as the organizer of the event. Seo Joo-Heon then gave an entrance fee of 1 relic for each person present there, and that immediately made the people there disappointed and surprised. They became hesitant now because of the fee requested by Seo Joo-Heon, and Austin, who happened to be there, was angry and did not accept the fee requested by Seo Joo-Heon. But Seo Joo-Heon said that there were not many seats left, and Seo Joo-Heon also considered someone with a weak economic condition if he raised the entrance fee. But the people became unhappy because the only people attending the auction this time were the rich. But Seo Joo-Heon ignored their anger and asked them to pay to Yoo Ji-ha if they wanted to enter. And Seo Joo-Heon again said that the visitors should choose the relic carefully because Seo Joo-Heon would choose them based on the relic they paid for, and those words made the visitors even more angry and upset. Yoo Ji-ha tried to calm them down, and it ended in a defeat because the visitors became more aggressive now, and inevitably Yoo Ji-ha had to rent a place to accommodate and record the relics of the visitors, and surprisingly the visitors gave relics with high rank. After they entered, Austin was in the front position now with Seo Joo-Heon as his guide. Seo Joo-Heon took out his relic so that everyone there could believe in the relic he was going to auction this time. After the relic was displayed in front of it, all interested visitors approached the relic and were amazed by the relic in front of him. Seo Joo-Heon waited until all the visitors entered and he would start the auction. Meanwhile, with Yoo Ji-ha, who received the last visitor, closed his registration, and the visitors who failed to enter left quietly, seeing that Yoo Ji-ha was more positive if this auction would go well this time. After that, Yoo Ji-ha also asked the relic collection officer about the number of relics they had collected now, and saw 3 full boxes filled with relics that had been collected. But before Yoo Ji-ha really left there, he heard someone calling him. And when Yoo Ji-ha turned his head to see who was calling him, someone he avoided the most at the auction this time, Yoo Ji-ha tried to talk to Miller as friendly as possible. But Miller, who knew everything, immediately said the point of the conversation and said that Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo Ji-ha were selling fake relics now and asked about their motives for selling the fake relics. Yoo Ji-ha, who felt that he had been caught red-handed by Miller, did not know what to say now. Yoo Ji-ha then recalled what Seo Joo-Heon had said about Miller earlier about the super powerful relic that Miller possessed that allowed him to know the weaknesses of the relic and tomb, and that's why Miller couldn't be tricked by the replica even though it had the relic's core in it. Yoo Ji-ha also gave a false excuse to Miller. But of course, Miller knew that Yoo Ji-ha had lied to him now, because Miller had gone in and checked it with his own eyes to make sure that the relic was fake. Miller then said Yoo Ji-ha's motive for doing all this, and now Miller became suspicious of Yoo Ji-ha, who had deceived everyone there. Yoo Ji-ha became scared and panicked now. Miller, who heard that Yoo Ji-ha still didn't want to give him the real reason, walked into the auction house to reveal the truth. Yoo Ji-ha, who saw Miller was about to enter the auction house and make a mess there, thought of a plan to stop Miller, who was trying to get in. Will Yoo Ji-ha succeed in stopping Miller? And will this auction go smoothly? There was a voice of Yoo Ji-ha who was trying to stop Miller, who was about to enter the auction house, and Miller, who heard Yoo Ji-ha calling him, stopped his steps and looked back. Yoo-Ji-ha, who was frustrated, admitted that they put a fake relic inside, but it was because they would give the real relic to the winner. Yoo-Ji-ha thought of stopping Miller in every way he could, but Miller refuted Miller's statement because Seo Joo-Heon said that the relic on display was a real relic. Because Miller was not satisfied with the reason given by Yoo-Ji-ha, he stepped in. Yoo-Ji-ha still insisted on stopping Miller from entering, but the stubborn Miller didn't want to hear anything from Yoo-Ji-ha now. The atmosphere in the room was lively as several people continued to auction the items sold by Seo Joo-Heon, and Miller, who had been inside, used his relic and asked them all to stop. Seo Joo-Heon turned to the person who interrupted the auction and he saw Miller standing there, also seeing Yoo-Ji-ha trying to get Miller out of the auction. Seo Joo-Heon was not able to let Miller disrupt his auction event. He ordered the rope relic to tie Miller and take him away. Miller rebelled from Yoo-Ji-ha, who tried to pull him out, and Miller was about to leak the flaws in Seo Joo-Heon's relic. But before Miller managed to leak it, the rope relic quickly closed his mouth and tied his whole body, making Miller fall down, and everyone there saw it. Seo Joo-Heon, who had seen Miller tied up, smiled happily and made false rumors to all the visitors there if Miller forced Seo Joo-Heon to sell the relic only to him. Seo Joo-Heon further made the good name of Miller fall by continuing to make rumors about Miller, and after that Seo Joo-Heon continued his auction event again. The auction went smoothly and even touched $9 million, but someone raised his hand and was going to auction the relic of Seo Joo-Heon with his Tier S's relic. It suddenly got a sneer from other visitors, but Seo Joo-Heon, who saw it, smiled happily and asked for more than one Tier S's relic to exchange with his relic. And all the visitors there began to auction Seo Joo-Heon's items with their respective relics. Seo Joo-Heon only saw that people began to auction using their relics, and it made Seo Joo-Heon happy to see it. And in the end, the relic belonging to Seo Joo-Heon fell into the hands of a daughter of Monica named Sophia. Seo Joo-Heon tapped the hammer, indicating that the auction this time was over. Sophia, who won the relic, became very happy, while on the other hand, Austin did not accept that Sophia won the relic even though he auctioned it for the same amount. But Seo Joo-Heon managed to upset Austin by determining Sophia as the winner of the auction this time. Seo Joo-Heon did not want to deal with Pandora because of this. Meanwhile, the angry Austin was still looking at Sophia, who was smiling happily, as well as Seo Joo-Heon, who was happy because the auction this time went well. Meanwhile, in another room was seen Miller, who was still tied with Seo Joo-Heon's rope. It seems that Miller deliberately entered the auction house. He was even willing to pay the entrance fee, and Miller said that Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo-Ji-ha installed a fake relic in there. Seo Joo-Heon also asked for a relic rope to open Miller's mouth. As soon as his mouth opened, Miller immediately scolded Seo Joo-Heon for being a fraud. Seo Joo-Heon also asked Miller to close his mouth, but it seemed Miller did not want to just accept it. Seo Joo-Heon asked Miller not to do anything because the relic was sold to a princess because she didn't want to get involved in something troublesome, but Miller still refused to shut his mouth. And while Seo Joo-Heon was trying to think of something to do with Miller, suddenly a spirit came out of the vent. Seo Joo-Heon, who realized that someone was listening to their entire conversation all this time, tried to stop him, but Seo Joo-Heon missed the opportunity. Yoo-Ji-ha panicked because someone had been eavesdropping on them all this time. Miller, who saw it, became happy because someone else knew the truth. And just like what Miller said, the two of them would soon be caught if the relic spread the information. But Seo Joo-Heon had other plans to escape now. The two of them were whispering about Miller there, and Seo Joo-Heon had made a plan with Miller in it. Meanwhile, with Sophia, who received the relic, felt very happy when she got the relic from the 7 great tombs. And since Sophia had paid for it, so she had the right to take the relic. Sophia then handed over the relic to her subordinates, and Sophia also hoped that she would be one of the relic users that would be noticed by Pandora. But before Sophia actually left, she was stopped by a voice coming from Seo Joo, who said that the relic was a fake, but Sophia became wary and suspicious of Seo Joo because she didn't know her. Hearing that the relic she got from the auction was a fake, Sophia was shocked to hear that fact. And Seo Joo, who said that the relic was a fake, would try to prove it to Sophia if the item was a fake. Seo Joo also asked Sophia to take out the relic so that she could prove it if the relic was a counterfeit item. Will Seo Joo be able to prove it? And what will happen if Seo Joo-Heon gets caught for it? Seo Joo asked Sophia to take out the relic, but Sophia did not believe her. But Seo Joo managed to persuade her and Sophia took out the fake relic. Seo Joo asked her to hold the relic with one hand and immediately Seo Joo slashed the relic with her dagger and the relic successfully split into two parts. Sophia was surprised when she saw the relic in her hand split into two pieces. Seo Joo then said that the relic was split only using a relic dagger with tier B. Sophia, who knew that the relic should not be split with Seo Joo's low-tier relic, became angry now that she had been tricked. Seo Joo also managed to make the other visitors believe that they had been tricked from the beginning. Seo Joo told them to close the exit access because Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo Ji-ha were still in this building, and immediately everyone flocked to arrest Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo was happy because she managed to provoke so many people to believe her, and she moved to find the original relic. Meanwhile, with Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo Ji-ha still doing something there, Seo Joo-Heon told Yoo Ji-ha to hurry up because the longer it took, the angrier the crowd would be. Seo Joo was still looking for the real relic, but she heard a voice from the direction of the crowd. Seo Joo-Heon had come with Yoo Ji-ha in tow, coming up to them as if he had done nothing wrong. The crowd began to pepper Seo Joo-Heon with questions, and Seo Joo-Heon admitted that he had been selling counterfeit goods. Of course, it angered the crowd. Seo Joo, who saw Seo Joo-Heon walking and admitting her mistake, became suspicious of Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon asked them all to calm down and she also asked Yoo Ji-ha to show something. Yoo Ji-ha opened her stomach and there was a wound there. The visitors there looked at Yoo Ji-ha with a concerned look, and the acting started. Yoo Ji-ha started to confess that they never wanted to sell a fake relic, and he said that he got a threat from someone that they had to sell the relic to someone, and because they didn't think about it because it was a popular relic. Yoo Ji-ha was stabbed with a knife by that person. And to make it more believable, Yoo Ji-ha took out a referral letter from the hospital. Yoo Ji-ha also said that they had to sell this relic because they had no other choice to save themselves, and Seo Joo-Heon said that he would catch the culprit at this auction house. Seo Joo-Heon had thought of this plan beforehand and he was sure that this plan would succeed. Sophia also asked for an explanation why she was used to catch the culprit. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard that, could only apologize to Sophia because Seo Joo-Heon thought that Sophia was in good protection. Seo Joo-Heon also promised to give the relic when he managed to find the culprit. Seo Joo-Heon was still trying to persuade Sophia now. Sophia also felt a little moved to believe what Seo Joo-Heon said. Not only that, the other visitors also began to agree with the proposal given by Seo Joo-Heon to catch the culprit. And as Seo Joo-Heon had planned, everything was just an act and a lie, and he was waiting for someone who would come in a moment. After that, Miller appeared and looked for someone who had won the relic, and after seeing Miller who came, Seo Joo-Heon said that he had exposed his own lie. Miller was relieved that Seo Joo-Heon had done the right thing, and now Seo Joo-Heon was going to give him the real relic that he kept under his jacket, but when he reached into his jacket pocket, his expression became panicked and surprised. Yoo Ji-ha also asked what happened to Seo Joo-Heon, but it seemed that the relic had disappeared from Seo Joo-Heon's hand. Everyone was confused now seeing Seo Joo-Heon, who lost the original relic. Seo, who saw the panicked expression on Seo Joo-Heon's face, was sure that Seo Joo-Heon was not lying. Seo Joo-Heon told everyone not to move because the relic had been stolen. Meanwhile, Miller asked Seo Joo-Heon how the relic could be stolen, but Seo Joo-Heon also did not know how the relic could be stolen just like that. Miller also helped Seo Joo-Heon to find the relic of Seo Joo-Heon using his own relic. And Seo Joo-Heon smiled happily because Miller wanted to help him. And when Miller used his relic, he saw the real relic under his clothes. Miller, who saw the relic on him, now looked at Seo Joo-Heon, who smiled evilly at him. Miller had been perfectly framed by Seo Joo-Heon. The Sophia guards searched Miller, and what really happened was Seo Joo-Heon deliberately made Miller to release himself, and Seo Joo-Heon asked Nero to hide his aura and stick to Miller. Miller will know everything when he uses his Zhuge relic, but Seo Joo-Heon knows that Miller doesn't have enough power to use it, and the visitors there got the original Nero relic from Miller. Miller tried to defend himself, but the visitors there did not believe Miller. It was seen that Sophia wanted to use Seol's relic dagger to check it. Sophia raised the dagger and prepared to cut it, but what happened was that the dagger was unable to cut the real Nero relic, and because it was attacked, it made Nero very angry. Sophia, who had confirmed that the relic was real, looked angrily at Miller. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon also blamed Miller, and it was seen that the two of them were arguing because Seo Joo-Heon had framed Miller now. Everyone started talking about Miller, who turned out to be the person behind the attacker Yoo Ji-ha, and it made everyone not trust Miller anymore. And Seo Joo-Heon was very satisfied because he managed to trap Miller very well. What will happen to Miller? Will Seo Joo-Heon give the original relic of Nero to Sophia? And with that, the auction ended. Miller had been arrested by the police on suspicion of threatening and stealing the relic, and because of that, Miller no longer had the trust of the public, and that would make things a little less troublesome for Seo Joo-Heon. After her mission was completed, Seo Joo-Heon had no choice but to hand over the original NERP relic to Sophia. And after all the visitors left the auction house, Seo Joo-Heon also decided to return to her home in New York. And at this time in Seo Joo-Heon's house, Oh Seung-woo saw a lot of gold and relics obtained by Seo Joo-Heon. Seeing that, his subordinate was amazed by Seo Joo-Heon, who was able to bring so many relics. Seo Joo-Heon smiled happily, but Seo Joo-Heon was a little sad because he lost the relic Nero, and it seemed that Seo Joo-Heon was blaming someone for it. Seen below, Yoo Ji-ha admitted his mistake and was being punished by Seo Joo-Heon by doing 100 push-ups and making him say strange things. Yoo Ji-ha could only accept his sad fate. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard that Yoo Ji-ha was still trying to fight him back, blamed Yoo Ji-ha because he deserved to be punished for his mistakes, and blamed Yoo Ji-ha because he couldn't stop Miller before. Yoo Ji-ha did everything Seo Joo-Heon ordered, and Seo Joo-Heon was a little happy because he got a good relic from Sophia. And immediately Seo Joo-Heon saw the relic of Nero in front of his window, asking Seo Joo-Heon to open it. Seo Joo-Heon asked why the relic of Nero returned so quickly, and Nero said that he still had business with Seo Joo-Heon, namely a competition with him. Yoo Ji-ha, who was being punished, suddenly woke up when he saw Nero, who had returned now, because previously Yoo-Ji-ha was very sure that the relic of Nero was in the hands of Sophia's daughter. Seo Joo-Heon confirmed it and said that Nero ran away from Sophia because they hadn't finished the competition. Seo Joo-Heon also said that lost items were the responsibility of Sophia. Yoo-Ji-ha asked for an explanation to Seo Joo-Heon, who had planned everything from the beginning and knew that Nero would return to him even if he handed it over to Sophia. And Seo Joo-Heon confirmed all the assumptions of Yoo-Ji-ha. Yoo-Ji-ha was sad that Seo Joo-Heon still punished him even though everything had been planned by Seo Joo-Heon. But Seo Joo-Heon still blamed Yoo-Ji-ha for letting Miller in, and Seo Joo-Heon's subordinates only saw the two of them arguing. There was a voice of Nero who called him and wanted to hurry up and do the competition. Nero asked Seo Joo-Heon for it because he had listened to various requests from Seo Joo-Heon and always granted them, and Seo Joo-Heon agreed to do the competition. But of course, Seo Joo-Heon could not do the competition here because it would only lead to the destruction of the house he had. Seo Joo-Heon opened her laptop and thought of going to another place by searching using her laptop, because if Nero created his palace here, it would only result in the destruction of the surroundings. Seo Joo-Heon could not let that happen, and it was seen that Seo Joo-Heon was searching for an uninhabited island on her internet. Nero became impatient with the competition he was going to organize, but Seo Joo-Heon was still looking for an empty island to conduct the competition. Seo Joo-Heon also got an idea of a suitable place to be the stage of his competition. Meanwhile, in Monaco, a building was seen burning with fire. There were also several people and firefighters there fighting the fire that suddenly appeared. It seemed that the fire came from the relic of Nero. In another part, Sophia was seen pacing back and forth with great anxiety, and a subordinate reported that the fire had been successfully extinguished. Sophia was relieved to hear it. Sophia also asked the servant to do whatever it took to extinguish the fire that spread immediately. But before the subordinate left, Sophia mentioned about the missing relic, and the subordinate was willing to look for it. After the subordinate left, Sophia looked upset because of the relic Nero who had troubled her. Previously, Sophia was very happy when she finally got the relic she had wanted, but when Sophia touched it, the relic Nero became angry. Sophia had tried to explain that she was the owner now, but the relic Nero did not recognize her as the owner and attacked Sophia with her fire. The relic attacked Sophia, but she was able to calm it down and put it back into her suitcase, but the suitcase seemed to be destroyed, and wherever the relic escaped, it always made flames wherever it went. Sophia no longer knew how to tame the relic, but a voice from behind surprised her. Sophia, who saw that it was Seo-Ah who called her asking about the progress of her relic search, and Seo-Ah said that she had found the relic Nero. However, Seo-Ah found the relic in a very strange place because the relic was now in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Sophia was surprised to hear that the relic had escaped that far. Seo-Ah was sure that the relic was heading to an island in Hawaii. Sophia did not know why the relic chose to go to Hawaii when the relic managed to escape. Seo-Ah was skeptical because it was unusual for a relic to cross the ocean on its own, but she could confirm the truth of the information she conveyed now. Sophia also believed the information given by Seo-Ah, and she decided to leave for Hawaii right now to find the relic. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, on an island called Kauai, there are white sandbanks and blue waves that rustle, adding to the beauty of the island. Yoo-Ji-ha regrets that they have to do a competition here instead of a vacation. But Seo Joo-Heon asks Yoo-Ji-ha not to expect more because this place is likely to be destroyed because of the competition that Seo Joo-Heon will do with Nero. Because when the competition starts, Nero will create his palace here like what he did in Kyoto before. Seo Joo-Heon also confirmed Yoo-Jia's assumption about the formation of the same tomb on this island, and that's why Seo Joo-Heon decided to avoid residential areas. Yoo-Jia, who was worried about the people living here, was relieved when Seo Joo-Heon said if no one lives here now because this island is a private island chosen by CEO Kwon. Will Seo Joo-Heon be able to do what he planned? What will happen if Sophia comes to the island?